Hi, my name's Robert. I am a senior associate in the immigration team at King's Aptley, and I'm joined by
Radhika, and I also work in the immigration team as an immigration advisor.
So we're talking a bit about sponsor license revocations and suspensions. So this is unfortunately a bigger theme at the moment in the UK immigration system. So after a period of not much enforcement action from UKVI, they have really kicked it up a gear, and it seems to be a real part of their operation at the moment, basically going after companies and organisations that they consider to have perhaps having to have shortcomings in their compliance with the sponsor duties. And I think, Radhika, you've got even some numbers about what's happening.
Yeah. So we saw in 2023 there were 337 sponsor license revocations, whereas in 2024 this jumped up to 1,924 revocations, which is a huge 471% increase. We often see that this enforcement action is sector focused, and UKVI usually focus their attention towards hospitality and retail businesses as being soft targets, and generally where there is less compliance.
Yeah, and getting caught up in enforcement action is really a miserable situation. It's very stressful for organisations, for their employees, especially those that have visas, who have sponsored work visas. So it's really, really important for businesses to try and get ahead of this and not get caught up in this sort of enforcement drive at the moment.
So usually the company that holds the sponsor license is aware that they are involved in some sort of enforcement action because they might have been audited by UKVI. So it's not something that is completely out of the blue. And then once UKVI do decide to take enforcement action, this is usually delivered by email to the authorizing officer listed on the license. So it's very important to keep these details up to date, as many times if these details are incorrect, then emails and any correspondence from UKVI could get lost. And you wanted to talk a bit more about what happens when UKVI suspend the license.
Yeah, so they don't normally jump straight to revocation, but they can, theoretically. The UKVI can sort of just revoke an organisation's sponsor license. Normally what happens is, if they're taking enforcement action, is they suspend the license and write a letter, say we're suspending it for these reasons, make an inviting representations about why the license shouldn't be revoked, and you can, at that point, the organisation has an opportunity to sort of try and reassure UKVI and address their concerns and ask that the sponsor license not proceed to revocation. So it's really important for organisations, if they're not already getting advice, particularly at that point, that they really should go off and get advice. You're getting a chance, in effect, to make sure that the severe consequences of having your license revoked don't happen. So it's really an opportunity to get some help with making very robust representations. So even for businesses that have historic shortcomings and failings, they still can potentially reassure UKVI and show that their processes have been brought up to date and they are at least now compliant. So it's a high stakes moment as well, because obviously if your license is revoked, your sponsored workers that are on that license, their permission ultimately eventually will get cancelled, and they won't have a right to work for the business, and they won't have a right to live in the UK. So for them, it's really important as well to think: are there immigration options for them that we can get them off our sponsor license and have them sort of with status independent of the business, if it looks like it is going to move towards revocation. So if UKVI decides to revoke or suspend your license, there's no right of appeal to that decision, unfortunately. There's only, in a sense, at the initial stage, appealing informally to UKVI through your representations and through requests. I was asking them to leave the license or to have it reinstated, which is obviously difficult. You're beholden to them. There is judicial review, which is really very difficult. it's really expensive and time consuming, and the outcomes are obviously very uncertain. And even if you were to potentially have grounds for pursuing judicial review, the public law remedies are not very appetising. So it's not often used at all for companies that are running into problems with their licenses being revoked, unfortunately.
So just from hearing what Robert said, we want to end with saying that prevention is better than the cure. You don't want to wait until UKVI come knocking at your door, as the hassle and the stress is much greater, and you should review your processes and ensure you're being compliant to ensure that you are not involved with any enforcement action by UKVI.
Yeah, to lower the risk that you're involved in enforcement action.
To lower
it is down to UKVI. But you have to you don't want to give them easy wins. You want to have a sort of robust processes in place so that if they do come knocking and check the business or the organisation, that it's in a good enough shape that it won't get into trouble.
Yes, exactly.